All right, so we're going to go for part 8. This is the walkthrough for the questions, answers, and explanations for the AWS Security Specialty Exam. Remember to like, subscribe. You can share it if you'd like to. So let's continue. An online media company has an application that customers use to watch events around the world. The application is hosted on a fleet of EC2s that run Amazon Linux 2. The company uses a systems manager to manage the EC2s. The company applies patches and application updates using Amazon Linux 2 default patching baseline in Systems Manager Patch Manager. The company is concerned about potential attacks on the application during the week of an upcoming event. The company needs a solution that can immediately deploy patches to all EC2s in response to a security incident or vulnerability. The solution also must provide centralized evidence that the patches were applied successfully. What are the steps that would actually do this? Create a new patching baseline in Patch Manager. Specify Amazon Linux 2 as the product. Specify security as the classification. Set the automatic approval for patches to 0 days. Ensure that the new patching baseline is the designated default for Amazon Linux 2. Use the Patch Now option with the scan and install operation in the Patch Manager console to apply patches against the baseline to all nodes. Specify an S3 bucket as the patching log storage option. Creating a security-focused baseline with 0-day approval enables immediate patch deployment. The Patch Now operation provides an on-demand patching across all instances, while S3 logging provides centralized evidence of patch application success for audit and compliance purposes. The company's data lake uses S3 and Athena. The company's security engineer has been asked to design an encryption solution that meets the company's data protection requirements. The encryption solution must work with S3 and keys managed by the company. The encryption solution must be protected in a hardware security module that's validated to Federal Information Processing Standards, FIPS 140-2 Level 3. What solution does this? A KMS customer managed key that's backed by a custom key store using Cloud HSM. KMS custom key stores backed by Cloud HSM provide FIPS 140-2 Level 3 validated hardware security while maintaining compatibility with S3 encryption. The solution meets regulatory requirements while providing seamless integration with AWS services. A company has a serverless application that uses Lambda functions and Systems Manager parameters to store configuration data. The company moves the Lambda functions inside the VPC and into private subnets. The Lambda functions are now producing errors in their attempts to access Systems Manager parameters. What solution will allow the Lambda functions to access system managers inside the VPC? An interface VPC endpoint for Systems Manager. When Lambda functions are moved into VPC private subnets, they lose internet connectivity when needed to access AWS services. Creating a Systems Manager interface VPC endpoint provides private connectivity to Systems Manager without requiring internet access. The company has an application on EC2s that store confidential customer data. The company must restrict access to customer data. A security engineer requires secure access to the instances that host the application. According to company policy, users must not open any inbound ports, maintain bastion hosts, or manage SSH keys for the EC2. The security engineer wants to monitor, store, and access all sessions activity logs. The logs must be encrypted. What solution does this? Systems Manager, Session Manager. Connect the EC2 instances. Amazon CloudWatch logging, right? Configure that. Select the upload log session logs option, and allow only encrypted CloudWatch log groups. Sessions Manager provides secure access without SSH keys or open ports while enabling comprehensive session logging. CloudWatch logs encryption ensures log confidentiality, while centralized logging provides complete audit trails of all session activities. The company's security policy requires that VPC flow logs are enabled on all VPCs. A security engineer is looking to automate the process of auditing the VPC resources for compliance. What combination would the engineer take? Create a Lambda function that determines whether flow logs are enabled for a VPC, create a config custom rule and associate it with a Lambda function that contains the evaluating logic. Config custom rules with Lambda functions provide automated compliance checking for specific requirements like VPC flow logs. The Lambda function contains the evaluation logic, while the config manages the compliance assessment and reporting across all VPCs. A security engineer is creating a Lambda function. The Lambda function needs to use a role that is named Lambda Audit Role to assume a role that is named Acme Audit Factory Role in a different AWS account. When the code is processed, the following error message appears. An error occurred, access denied, when calling the assume role operation. What steps should the engineer take to resolve this? Ensure Lambda audit role has the STS assume role permission for Acme audit factory role. Ensure that the trust policy for Acme audit factory role allows the STS assume role action from the Lambda audit role. Cross-account role assumption requires bidirectional trust. The source role, Lambda audit role, needs STS assume role permissions for the target role, and the target role, Acme audit factory role, must trust the source in its trust policy. The company's application uses DynamoDB to store data. The company's security policy requires all data to be encrypted at rest. The security policy also requires the company to use an on-prem hardware security module to generate and manage the company's encryption keys. The security engineer uses the on-prem HSM to generate an encryption key. What should the engineer do next to meet the requirements? Generate a new KMS customer managed key. Import the new key material. Grant DynamoDB access to use the key. Create a new DynamoDB table and select the new key as the encryption key. Import the data into DynamoDB. KMS supports importing key material from external resources like on-prem HSMs. Creating a customer-managed key with imported key material allows the company to use their HSM-generated keys while enabling DynamoDB encryption at rest through KMS integration. The security engineer has noticed that the VPC flow logs are getting a lot of reject traffic originating from a single EC2 in an auto-scaling group. The engineer is concerned the EC2 instance may be compromised. What action should that engineer take? Remove the instance from the auto-scaling group. Close the security group with ingress only from a single forensic IP to perform an analysis. Removing the instance from the auto-scaling group prevents automatic termination, while restricting security group access to only forensic IP addresses isolates the potentially compromised instance for an investigation while preserving evidence for analysis. The company is running its workloads in a single region and uses AWS organizations. An engineer must implement a solution to prevent users from launching resources in other regions. What solution will meet these requirements with least operational overhead? Create a service control policy that has an AWS requested region condition that denies actions that are not in the designated region. Attach the policy to an AWS account in AWS organizations. SCPs with AWS requested region conditions provide organization-wide regional restrictions with minimal operational overhead. This preventative control automatically applies to all users and roles across the organization without requiring individual policy management or ongoing maintenance. Okay. All right. A security engineer is evaluating a company's use of AWS KMS. The security engineer must implement a hybrid solution with two sets of keys to meet the following requirements. The company needs granular control over the keys so that the company can maintain a copy of the keys in the key management infrastructure and re-import the keys at any time. The company needs the ability to set the expiration period to 3 days for the keys. No restrictions exist regarding immediate key deletion. A waiting period of 14 days is acceptable for keys to be marked deleted. What's the solution for this? Use imported keys for set 1. Use AWS managed keys for set 2. For set 1, an expiration period. AWS will automatically delete the keys after the expiration period has elapsed. Imported keys provide granular control and allow re-importing at any time, with automatic deletion after expiration. AWS managed keys have a 7 to 30-day deletion window. 14 days is in that window, and requires no key material management, meaning different requirements for each set. Company operates a web app that runs on EC2 instances. The application listens on port 40 or port 80 and port 443. Company uses an application load balancer with WAF to terminate SSL and to forward traffic to the application instances only on port 80. The load balancer is in public subnets that are associated with a network ACL that's named NACL1. The application instances are in dedicated private subnets that are associated with a network ACL that is named NACL2. An RDS for PostgreSQL database instance that uses port 5432 is in a dedicated private subnet that is associated with a NACL that is named NACL3. All NACLs currently allow all inbound and outbound traffic. Which set of NACL changes will increase the security of the application while ensuring functionality? Make the changes to NACL3 Add a rule that allows inbound traffic on port 5432 from the CIDR blocks of the application instance subnet. Add a rule that allows outbound traffic on port 124 to 65,536 to the application instance subnets. Remove the default rules that allow inbound and outbound traffic. NACL 3 should only allow database traffic from application subnets on port 5432 inbound and return traffic on ephemeral ports at 1024 to 65,536 outbound. This restricts database access to only the application tier while maintaining functionality through proper return traffic handling. The security team believes that a former employee may have gained unauthorized access to AWS resources sometime in the past 3 months by using an identified access key. What approach would enable the security team to find out what the former employee may have done with AWS? Use CloudTrail to search for user activity. CloudTrail logs all API calls made to AWS services, including those made with specific access keys. The CloudTrail console provides search and filtering capabilities to track activities associated with specific user identities or access keys over the required 3-month time frame. The company is storing data in S3 Glacier. The security engineer implemented a new vault lock policy for 10 terabytes of data and called initiate vault lock operations 12 hours ago. The audit team identified a typo in the policy that is allowing unintended access to the vault. What is the most cost-effective way to correct this? Call the abort vault lock operation, update the policy, call the initiate vault lock operation again. During the vault lock process, you have 24 hours to abort the operation before it becomes permanently enforced. Aborting and reinitiating with the corrected policy is cost-effective as it doesn't require data movement or vault recreation, just policy modification. The company wants to control access to its AWS resources by using identities and groups that are defined in its existing Active Directory. What must the company create in its AWS account to map permissions for AWS services to Active Directory user attributes? IAM roles. IAM roles are the mechanism for mapping permissions to federated identities from Active Directory. Roles can be assumed by Active Directory users through SAML federation, allowing AWS permissions to be mapped to Active Directory group memberships and user attributes. The company has contracted with a third party to audit several AWS accounts. To enable the audit, cross-account IAM roles have been created and each account targeted for audit. The auditor is having trouble accessing some of the accounts. What might be causing this? The external ID used by the auditor is missing or incorrect. The auditor has not been created an STS assume role for the role in the destination account. The role ARN used by the auditor is missing or incorrect. So, a cross-account role assumption requires proper external IDs for security, explicit STS assume role permission in the auditor's account, and correct role ARN specification. Any of these missing or incorrect elements will prevent successful role assumption. Compliance requirements state that all communications between company on-prem hosts and EC2s be encrypted in transit. Hosts use custom proprietary protocols for their communications, and EC2s need to be fronted by a load balancer for increased availability. Which of the following solutions meet the requirements? Route all traffic through a TCP listener on a classic load balancer and terminate the TLS connection on the EC2s. TCP listeners on classic load balancers allow custom protocols to pass through without termination, enabling end-to-end TLS encryption from on-prem hosts to EC2s. This maintains encryption compliance while supporting proprietary protocols and load balancing. A security admin is restricting the capabilities of company root user accounts. The company uses AWS organizations and has enabled it for all feature sets, including consolidated billing. The top-level account is used for billing and admin purposes, not operational AWS resource purposes. How can the admin restrict usage of member root user accounts across the org? Create an organizational unit in organizations with a service control policy that controls the usage of the root user. Add all operational accounts to the new organizational unit. SCPs can explicitly restrict user actions across member accounts in an organization unit. By creating an organization unit with root user restrictions and moving operational accounts into it, the admin can enforce organization-wide root user limitations while preserving management account flexibility. A systems engineer has been tasked with configuring outbound mail through simple email service and requires compliance with current TLS standards. The mail application should be configured to connect to which of the following endpoints and corresponding ports. One example, email-smtp.us-east-1.amazonaws.com over port 587. Port 587 is the standard submission port for SMTP to start TLS encryption, meeting current TLS compliance requirements. The email-SMTP endpoint provides the proper SMTP interface for SES mail submission with modern security standards. A threat assessment has identified a risk whereby an internal employee could exfiltrate sensitive data from production hosts running inside AWS account. This would be account 1. The threat would be documented as follows. A malicious actor could upload sensitive data from server X by configuring credentials for an AWS account, let's say account 2. They control and uploading the data to an S3 bucket within their control. Server X has outbound internet access configured via a proxy server. Legitimate access to S3 is required so that the application can then upload encrypted files to an S3 bucket. Server X is currently using an IAM instance role. The proxy server is not able to inspect any of the server communication due to TLS encryption. What are the options to mitigate the threat? Bypass the proxy and use an S3 VPC endpoint with a policy that whitelists only certain S3s within account 1. Block outbound access to public S3 endpoints on the proxy server. VPC endpoints with restrictive policies prevent access to external S3s while maintaining access to authorized buckets. Blocking public S3 endpoints at the proxy prevents the direct internet access to S3, forcing traffic through the controlled VPC endpoint pathway. The company will store sensitive documents in 3 S3 buckets based on a data classification scheme of sensitive, confidential, and restricted. The security solution must meet all the following requirements. Each object must be encrypted using a unique key. Items that are stored in the restricted bucket require two-factor authentication for decryption. KMS must automatically rotate encryption keys annually. What are the following that does this? Create a customer master key for each data classification type and enable the rotation of it annually. For the restricted CMK, define the MFA policy within the key policy. Use S3, SSE, KMS, server-side encryption to encrypt the objects. Server-side encryption automatically generates unique data encryption keys for each object while using the classification-specific CMK. Annual rotation can be enabled on CMKs, and MFA requirements can be enforced through key policies for the restricted classification, meeting all security requirements. An organization wants to deploy a 3-tier web application whereby the application servers run on Amazon EC2s. These EC2 instances need access to credentials that they will use to authenticate their SQL connections to an Amazon RDS database instance. Also, Lambda functions must issue queries to the RDS database by using the same database credentials. The credentials must be stored so that the EC2s and Lambda functions can access them. No other access is allowed. The access logs must record when the credentials are accessed and by whom. What should the engineer do to meet this? Store the database credentials in Secrets Manager. Create an IAM role with access to Secrets Manager by using the EC2 and Lambda service principles in the roles trust policy. Add the role to an EC2 instance profile. Attach the instance profile to the EC2s. Set Lambda to use the new role for execution. Secrets Manager provides secure credential storage with automatic access logging and auditing, using the same IAM role for both EC2 via instance profile. And Lambda ensures consistent access control while the service principles in the trust policy restrict access to only these services. A water utility company uses a number of EC2s to manage updates to a fleet of 2,000 Internet of Things devices that monitor water quality. These devices each have unique access credentials. An operational safety policy requires that access to specific credentials is independently auditable. What is the most cost-effective way to manage the storage of credentials? Systems Manager. Use this to store the credentials as secure string parameters, and secure this by using a KMS key. Parameter Store provides a cost-effective credential storage for large numbers of individual credentials with built-in auditing through CloudTrail. Secure strings parameters use KMS encryption while maintaining fine-grained access control for independently auditability of each device's credential access. An organization is using CloudWatch logs with agents deployed on its Linux Amazon EC2s. The agent configuration files have been checked and the application log files to be pushed are configured correctly. A review has identified that logging from specific instances is missing. Which steps should be taken to troubleshoot the issue? Use an EC2 run command to confirm that the AWS logs service is running on all instances. Verify that the permissions used by the agent allow creation of log groups, streams, and to put log events. Missing logs typically result from either the CloudWatch Logs agent service not running on the instance or insufficient IAM permissions for the agent to create log groups or streams and send log events. Both service status and permissions must be verified for proper operation. A security engineer must design a solution that enables the incident response team to audit for changes to a user's IAM permissions in case of a security incident. How does this get accomplished? Use config to review the IAM policy assigned to users before and after the incident. Config tracks configuration changes to IAM resources, including policy modifications. It provides a timeline of changes with before and after configurations, enabling incident response teams to audit exactly what IAM permissions changes occurred and when. The company has complex connectivity rules governing ingress, egress, and communications between EC2s. The rules are so complex that they cannot be implemented within the limits of the maximum number of security groups and NACLs. What mechanism will allow the company to implement all required network rules without additional costs? Use the operating system built-in host-based firewall to implement the required rules. Operating system firewalls like IP tables on Linux provide unlimited rule complexity at the host level without additional AWS costs. This approach supplements AWS network security controls when rule complexity exceeds platform limits while leveraging existing operating system capabilities. An IAM user with a full EC2 permissions cannot start an EC2 after it was stopped for a maintenance task. Upon starting the instance state would change to pending, but after a few seconds, it would switch back to stopped. An inspection revealed that the instance has attached EBS volumes that were encrypted by using a customer master key. When these encrypted volumes were detached, the IAM user was able to start the EC2s. What additional items need to be added? A KMS create grant and condition bool KMS grant is for AWS resource true. So EC2 requires KMS grants to access encrypted EBS volumes during instance startup. The KMS create grant permission with the KMS grant is for AWS resource condition allows EC2s to create the necessary grants for accessing encrypted volumes while restricting grant creation to AWS services only. A security admin has a website hosted in S3. The admin has been given the following requirements. Users may access the website by using a CloudFront distribution. Users may not access the website directly by using an S3 URL. What configurations will support this? Associate an origin access identity with CloudFront distribution and modify the S3 bucket so that only the origin access identity can access the bucket contents. So OAI creates a special CloudFront user that can access S3 content. By configuring S3 bucket permissions to allow only the OAI and removing public access, content becomes accessible exclusively through CloudFront while blocking direct S3 URL access. The company requires that IP packet data can be inspected for invalid or malicious content. Which of the following approaches achieve this requirement? Configure a proxy solution on Amazon EC2 and route all outbound VPC traffic through it. Perform inspection with proxy software on the EC2. Configure a host-based agent on each EC2 within the VPC. Perform inspection within the host-based agent. Both proxy-based inspection, centralized at the network level, and host-based agents distributed at the instance level can perform deep packet inspection for malicious content. These approaches enable content analysis beyond what network flow logs or access logs provide. An organization as a system in AWS allows a large number of remote workers to submit data files. The file sizes vary from a few kilobytes to several megabytes. A recent audit highlighted a concern that data files are not encrypted while in transit over untrusted networks. What solution would remediate the audit finding while minimizing effort required? Use a certificate manager to provision a certificate on an elastic load balancing in front of the web services servers. The ACM with the ELB load balancer provides automated certificate provisioning, and management for TLS encryption in transit. This approach requires minimal configuration changes while ensuring all file uploads are encrypted over HTTPS, addressing the audit finding with the least operational overhead. Which option for the use of the KMS supports key management best practices that focus on minimizing the potential scope of data exposed by possible future key compromise. Use KMS automatic key rotation to replace the master key and use this new master key for future encryption operations without re-encrypting previously encrypted data. Automatic key rotation limits the scope of key compromise by ensuring that new data uses new key material while old data remains encrypted with older keys. This approach minimizes exposure without requiring expensive re-encryption of existing data, following key management best practices. A security engineer must enforce the use of only AWS EC2s, S3, RDS, DynamoDB, and STS in specific accounts. What is a scalable and efficient approach to meet this? Set up an organization's hierarchy and replace the full AWS access policy with a service control policy for the governed organization units that allows only the specified services. SCPs provide organization-wide service restrictions by replacing the default full AWS access policy with a restrictive policy that explicitly allows only the required services. This approach scales efficiently across multiple accounts and OUs without individual account management. A company's database developer has just migrated an RDS database credential to be stored and managed by Secrets Manager. The developer has also enabled rotation of the credential within the Secrets Manager console and set the rotation to change every 30 days. After a short period of time, a number of existing applications have failed with authentication errors. What's the likely cause of the authentication errors? Enabling rotation in Secrets Manager causes the secret to rotate immediately, and the applications are using the earlier credential. When the rotation is first enabled in Secrets Manager, it triggers an immediate rotation to establish the rotation schedule. Applications still using the old credentials will fail until they're updated to retrieve current credentials from Secrets Manager rather than using cached or hard-coded values. A security engineer is managing a web app that processes highly sensitive personal information. The application runs on EC2. The application has strict compliance requirements which instruct that all incoming traffic to the application is protected from common web exploits and that all outgoing traffic from the EC2 is restricted to specific whitelisted URLs. What architecture should the security engineer use to meet these requirements? Use WAF to scan inbound traffic for web exploits. Use a third-party AWS Marketplace solution to restrict egress traffic to specific whitelisted URLs. WAF provides a comprehensive protection against common web exploits for inbound traffic. For granular egress using filtering, use URL filtering, Third-party solutions from AWS Marketplace offer more sophisticated URL whitelisting capabilities than native WAF or AWS services, meeting strict compliance requirements. The company recently experienced a DDoS attack that prevented its web server from serving content. The website is static and hosts only HTML, CSS, and PDF files that users download. Based on the architecture, what is the best way to protect the site against future attacks while minimizing ongoing operational overhead? Move the files to an S3 bucket. Create a CloudFront distribution in front of the bucket and terminate the web server. Moving static content to the S3 with CloudFront provides built-in DDoS protection through AWS Shield, eliminates server management overhead, and offers better scalability and performance. This architecture is ideal for static content delivery with minimal operational requirements. The IT department has stopped using classic load balancers and switched to application load balancers to save costs. After the switch, some users on older devices are no longer able to connect to the website. What is causing this? The cipher suites on the application load balancers are blocking connections. ALBs have a different default cipher suite compared to classic load balancers, potentially excluding old cipher suites that legacy devices require. Older devices may not support the modern cipher suites that ALBs enforce by default, causing connection failures. Security team is responsible for reviewing AWS API call activity in the cloud environment for security violations. These events must be recorded and retained in a centralized location for both current and future AWS regions. What's the simplest way to meet these requirements? Enable CloudTrail by creating a new trail and applying the trail to all regions. Specify a single S3 as the storage location. A single multi-region CloudTrail trail automatically captures API calls from all current and future AWS regions, storing them in one centralized S3. This approach provides the simplest management overhead while ensuring comprehensive coverage across all regions. The security admin is performing a log analysis as a result of the suspected AWS account compromise. The admin wants to analyze suspicious AWS CloudTrail log files but is overwhelmed by the volume of audit logs being generated. What approach enables the admin to search through the logs most efficiently? Configure Athena to read from CloudTrail S3 bucket and query the logs to examine account activities. Athena provides SQL-based querying capabilities for CloudTrail logs stored in S3, enabling efficient searching and filtering of large volumes of log data. This approach allows complex queries to identify suspicious activities without manually reviewing individual log files. During a recent security audit, it was discovered that multiple teams in a large org have placed restricted data in multiple S3 buckets, and the data may have been exposed. The auditor has requested that the organization identify all possible objects that contain personally identifiable information and then determine whether this information has been accessed. What solution allows the security team to complete this? Enable Macy on the S3s that were impacted, then perform data classification for identified objects that contain PII. Use the research function for auditing CloudTrail logs and S3 bucket logs for GET operations. Macy uses machine learning to automatically discover and classify PII in S3 buckets. Once PII containing objects are identified, CloudTrail and S3 access logs can be analyzed to determine if unauthorized access occurred, providing comprehensive PII exposure assessment. During a recent internal investigation, it was discovered that all API logging was disabled in a production account. At the end, the root user had created new API keys that appeared to have been used several times. What could have been done to detect and automatically remediate the incident? Using config, create a config rule that detects when AWS CloudTrail is disabled, as well as any calls to the root user create API key. Then use a Lambda function to re-enable CloudTrail logs and deactivate the root API keys. Config can monitor CloudTrail status and root user activities, triggering Lambda-based remediation when violations are detected. This proactive approach automatically re-enables logging and deactivates unauthorized root API keys, providing rapid response to security incidents. An application has a requirement to be resilient across not only availability zones within the application's primary region, but also be available within another region altogether. Which of the following supports this requirement for AWS resources that are encrypted by KMS? Use AWS services that replicate data across regions and rewrap the data encryption key created in the source region by using the CMK in the target region so that the target region CMK can decrypt the database encryption key. KMS keys are region-specific, so cross-region resilience requires rewrapping data encryption keys with the target region's CMK. This process allows encrypted data to be accessible in both regions while maintaining encryption security through region-appropriate key management. So, sorry about this. Okay. A security admin is configuring an S3 and must meet the following security requirements: encryption in transit, encryption at rest, logging of all object retrievals in CloudTrail. How do we do this? Specify AWS Secure Transport set to true within a condition in the S3 bucket policy. Set up a default encryption for the S3 bucket. Enable API logging of data events for all S3 objects. So AWS Secure Transport condition enforces HTTPS for encryption in transit. Default bucket encryption provides encryption at rest, and CloudTrail data events log all object access operations, including retrievals, meeting all three security requirements. What is the function of the key management service key policy that restricts the CMK to be used for encrypting and decrypting only when the principal is example user, and the request comes from workmail or simple email service in the specified region? The CMK is to be used for encrypting and decrypting only when the principal user is example user, and the request comes from workmail or SES in the region. This key policy implements the principle of least privilege by restricting CMK usage to a specific user, example user, and only when the request originates from the specific AWS services, workmail or simple email service, in the designated region, ensuring controlled access to encryption operations. A security engineer who was reviewing key management service key policies found a statement that allows only principals from a specific account that have an IAM policy applied that grants access to this key to use the key. What does this statement accomplish? Only principals from the account that have an IAM policy applied that grants access to this key can use this key. This key policy statement implements dual control by requiring both the key policy to allow the account and an IAM policy in that account to grant specific access. This ensures fine-grained control where both resource-based and identity-based policies must permit access. The security engineer created a new KMS key with a key policy. What are the effects of the policy? The policy would allow for access for a specific account to manage key access through IAM policies. And the policy allows the root user in the account to have full access to the KMS key. So a key policy grants the account root user full access to the KMS key and enables the account to manage key access through IAM policies. This is a common pattern for allowing account-level key management while maintaining centralized control. A software engineer wrote a customized reporting service that will run on a fleet of EC2s. The company's security policy states that application logs for the reporting service must be centrally collected. What is the most efficient way to do this? Install the CloudWatch Logs agent on EC2s and configure it to send the application logs to CloudWatch Logs. CloudWatch Logs agent provides automated, efficient log collection from the EC2 to a centralized CloudWatch Logs service. This approach requires minimal configuration while providing scalable log aggregation for fleet-wide log management. All right. The security engineer is trying to determine whether the encryption keys used in an AWS service are in compliance with certain regulatory standards. What are the actions an engineer should perform to get guidance? Use Artifact to access AWS client reports. Artifact provides access to compliance reports and certifications that detail how AWS services, including encryption implementations, meet various regulatory standards. This is the official source for AWS compliance documentation and certifications. The development team receives an error message that each time the team members attempt to encrypt or decrypt a secure string parameter from the SSM parameter store by using a KMS customer managed key. Which CMK related issues could be responsible? The CMK specified in the application doesn't exist. The CMK specified in the application is not enabled. So parameter store encryption decryption failures typically result from either referencing a non-existent CMK or attempting to use a disabled CMK. Both scenarios prevent the cryptographic operations required for secure string parameter access. An application has been written that publishes custom metrics to CloudWatch. Recently, IAM changes have been made on the account and the metrics are no longer being reported. Which of the following is the least permissive solution that will allow? Add a statement to the IAM policy used by the application to allow CloudWatch put metric data. The CloudWatch put metric data permission is the specific and minimal permission required for publishing custom metrics to CloudWatch. This follows the principle of least privilege by granting only the necessary permission for the required functionality. A developer's laptop was stolen. The laptop was not encrypted and contained the SSH key used to access multiple Amazon EC2s. A security engineer has verified that the key has not been used and has blocked port 22 to all EC2s while developing a response plan. How can the security engineer further protect currently running instances? Use the EC2 run command to modify the authorized keys file on any EC2 that is using the key. That's a long explanation. Oh no. That doesn't look like the right. No, that doesn't look like the right. Let me hit this with a strike through. My apologies. Maybe that was just an error. Okay. Sorry about that. An organization has tens of applications deployed on thousands of EC2s. During testing, the application team needs information to let them know whether the network, the NACLs, and security groups are working as expected. How can the application team's requirement be met? Turn on VPC flow logs, send the logs to Amazon S3, and use Amazon Athena to query the logs. So flow logs capture network traffic data showing whether traffic is accepted or rejected by security groups and NACLs. Athena provides SQL-based querying capabilities to analyze this data and verify that the NACL network security controls are functioning as expected. An application outputs logs to a text file. The logs must be continuously monitored for security incidents. Which design will meet the requirements with minimal effort? Install and configure the CloudWatch Logs agent on the application's EC2. Create a CloudWatch metric filter to monitor the application logs. Set up CloudWatch alerts based on the metrics. The CloudWatch Logs agent automatically streams log files to CloudWatch with minimal configuration. Metric filters can detect specific patterns in logs, and CloudWatch alarms provide automated alerting for security incidents, creating a complete monitoring solution with minimal operational overhead. A security engineer for a mobile game has to implement a method to authenticate users so that they can save their progress. Because most of the users are part of the same OpenID Connect compatible social media website, the security engineer would like to use that as the identity provider. What solution is the way to allow the authentication users to use their social media identities? Cognito. Cognito provides built-in support for OpenID Connect and social media identity providers with minimal configuration. It handles the complexity of identity federation, token management, and user authentication, making it the simplest solution for mobile applications. A software engineer is trying to figure out why network connectivity to an EC2 does not appear to be working correctly. Its security group allows inbound HTTP traffic on 0.0.0, and the outbound rules have not been modified from the default. A custom NACL associated with this subnet allows inbound HTTP traffic from 0.0.0 and has no outbound rules. What would resolve this? An outbound rule must be added to the NACL to allow the response to be sent to the client on the ephemeral port range. NACLs are stateless and require explicit outbound rules for return traffic. HTTP responses are use ephemeral ports like 1024 through 65,535. So the NACL needs an outbound rule allowing traffic on these ports for the HTTP response to reach the client. Security engineer has been asked to create an automated process to disable IAM user access keys that are more than 3 months old. Which of the following options should the security engineer use? Write a script that uses the generate credential report, get credential report, and update access key APIs. The credential report APIs provide information about access key age, and update access key API can disable keys programmatically. This combination enables automated identification and disabling of aged access keys according to security policies. The InfoSec team has mandated that in the future, only approved AMIs can be used. How can the InfoSec team ensure compliance with this mandate? Deploy config rules and check all running instances for compliance. Config rules can monitor EC2 instances and evaluate whether they were launched from approved AMIs. This provides continuous compliance monitoring and can trigger remediation actions when non-compliant instances are detected. A pharmaceutical company has digitized versions of historical prescriptions stored on-prem. The company would like to move these prescriptions to AWS and perform analytics on data in them. Any operation with this data requires that data be encrypted in transit and at rest. Which application flow would meet the data protection requirements on AWS? Digitize files to Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose to S3 to Athena. Kinesis Data Firehose provides encryption in transit and can deliver encrypted data to S3 with encryption at rest. Athena can then query the encrypted data in S3, maintaining encryption through analytics pipeline while meeting pharmaceutical compliance requirements. A company uses AWS organizations to manage 50 AWS accounts. The finance staff members log in as AWS IAM users in the finance department account. The staff members need to read the consolidated billing information in the master payer account. They should not be able to view any other resources in the master payer account. IAM access to billing has been enabled in the master payer account. What is the approach that grants finance staff the permissions they require without granting unnecessary permissions? Create an IAM role in the master payer account with the view billing permission. Then grant the finance users in the finance department account the permission to assume that role. So cross-account IAM roles with view billing permissions provide secure access to billing information without granting broader access to the payer account. Finance users can assume the role only for billing access, maintaining least privilege principles. A security engineer has been asked to troubleshoot inbound connectivity to a web server. This single web server is not receiving inbound connections from the internet, whereas all other web servers are functioning properly. The architecture includes NACLs, security groups, and virtual security appliance. In addition, the development team has implemented application load balancers to distribute the load across all web servers. What are the following other ways to troubleshoot the scenario? Verify which security group is applied to the particular web server's elastic network interface, ENI, and verify the registered targets in the load balancer. If one server isn't receiving traffic while others work, the issue likely involves either the server not being registered as a healthy target in the load balancer or having a different security group configuration that blocks traffic to that specific instance. CloudWatch Logs agent is successfully delivering logs to the CloudWatch Log service. However, logs stop being delivered after the associated log stream has been active for a specific number of hours. What steps are necessary to identify the cause of this phenomenon? Ensure that file permissions for monitored files that allow the CloudWatch Logs agent to read the files have not been modified. Verify that the OS log rotation rules are compatible with the configuration requirements for agent streaming. Log delivery issues after a specific time period typically indicate either file permission changes that prevent the agent from reading rotated logs or incompatible log rotation configurations that disrupt the agent's ability to continue streaming from rotated files. The company has deployed a custom DNS server in AWS. The security engineer wants to ensure that EC2s cannot use the Amazon-provided DNS. How can the security engineer block access to the Amazon-provided DNS in the VPC? Disable DNS resolution within the VPC configuration. So disabling DNS resolution in the VPC prevents instances from using the Amazon-provided DNS service, forcing them to use the custom DNS server. This is a VPC level setting that affects all instances within the VPC. Which of the following, what minimizes potential attack surface for applications? Use security groups to provide stateful firewalls for EC2s at the hypervisor level. Security groups operate at the hypervisor level, providing stateful filtering that can automatically track connections and allows return traffic. This minimizes attack surface by providing granular, stateful protection that's closer to the instance than network-level controls. A distributed web app is installed across several EC2s and public subnets residing in 2 availability zones. Apache logs show several intermittent brute force attacks from hundreds of IP addresses at the layer 7 level over the past 6 months. What would be the best way to reduce the potential impact of these attacks? Install intrusion prevention software on each instance. So layer 7 brute force attacks require application level inspection and prevention. Installing IPS on each instance provides real-time detection and blocking of application layer attacks, offering more granular protection than network level controls. The company plans to move most of its IT infrastructure to AWS. They want to leverage their existing on-prem Active Directory as an identity provider for AWS. Which combination of steps should a security engineer take to federate the company's on-prem Active Directory for AWS? Create IAM roles with permissions corresponding to each Active Directory group. Configure Active Directory to add relying party trust between Active Directory and AWS. So federating Active Directory with AWS requires establishing trust relationships and mapping Active Directory groups to IAM roles. The relying party trust enables Active Directory to issue SAML assertions to AWS, while IAM roles provide the permissions framework for federated users. A security alert has been raised for an EC2 in a customer account that's exhibiting strange behavior. The security engineer must first isolate the EC2 and then use tools for further investigation. What should the engineer use to isolate and research? Use CloudTrail, use VPC flow logs, and security groups. Security groups use those to isolate the compromised instance by restricting network access. CloudTrail APIs will provide the call history for forensic analysis, and VPC flow logs will show network traffic patterns to understand the scope and nature of the incident. An organization wants to be alerted when an unauthorized EC2 in its VPC performs a network port scan against other instances in the VPC. When the security team performs its own internal tests in a separate account by using pre-approved third-party scanners from the marketplace, the security team then also receives multiple Amazon Guard Duty events from CloudWatch alerting on its test activities. How can the security team suppress alerts about authorized security tests while still receiving alerts about the unauthorized activity? Add the elastic IP of the security team's EC2 to a trusted IP list in Guard Duty. Guard Duty's trusted IP list feature allows exclusion of known good IP addresses from generating alerts. Adding the security team's scanner IP addresses prevents alerts for authorized testing while maintaining detection capabilities for unauthorized port scanning activities. An organization is moving non-business critical applications to AWS while maintaining a mission critical application in an on-prem data center. An on-prem application must share limited confidential information with applications in AWS. The internet performance is unpredictable. What configuration would ensure continued connectivity between sites most securely? A VPN gateway over AWS Direct Connect. So VPN over Direct Connect provides both the reliability of dedicated connectivity and the security of encrypted tunnels. This configuration offers redundancy against internet performance issues while maintaining secure communication for confidential information sharing. An application has been built with EC2s that retrieve messages from SQS. Recently, IAM changes were made and the instances can no longer retrieve messages. What actions should be taken to troubleshoot the issue while maintaining least privilege? Verify that the SQS resource policy does not explicitly deny access to the role used by the instances. Verify that the role attached to the instances contains policies that allow access to the queue. SQS access requires both IAM permissions on the role and resource policy permissions on the queue. Troubleshooting should verify both layers without granting excessive permissions, focusing on the specific queue access needed by the instances. Which of the following is the most, all right, what's the most effective way to automate the encryption of CloudTrail logs using a customer managed master key in KMS? Configure CloudTrail to use server-side encryption using KMS managed keys to encrypt and decrypt CloudTrail logs. So CloudTrail natively supports KMS encryption through configuration settings, automatically encrypting all log files with the specified CMK. This approach provides seamless encryption without requiring additional processing or custom solutions. An organization is using CloudTrail, CloudWatch logs, and CloudWatch to send alerts when new access keys are created. However, the alerts are no longer appearing in the security operations mailbox. Which of the following actions would resolve this? In SNS, ensure that the subscription used by the alerts has not been deleted. So missing alerts typically indicate a broken notification chain. So SNS subscriptions can be accidentally deleted, interrupting the flow from CloudWatch alarms to email recipients. So verifying and restoring the subscription typically resolves the alert delivery issue. Security engineer must add additional protection to a legacy web application by adding HTTP security headers, content security policy, X-frame options, and XSS protection. The engineer does not have access to the source code of the legacy web application. What is the approach to meet this requirement? Implement a Lambda at edge origin response function that inserts the required headers. So Lambda at edge origin response functions can modify HTTP responses without changing application code. This approach adds security headers to all responses from the legacy application, providing protection against cross-site scripting, clickjacking, and other web vulnerabilities. During a security event, it's discovered that some EC2s have not been sending CloudWatch logs. What steps can a security engineer take to troubleshoot this? Connect to the EC2 instances that are not sending the appropriate logs and verify that CloudWatch logs agents are running. Verify that the EC2s have a route to the public API endpoint. So missing logs typically result from either CloudWatch logs agents not running on the instance or network connectivity issues preventing the agent from reaching CloudWatch endpoints. Both the agent status and network connectivity must be verified. A security engineer discovers that developers have been adding rules to security groups that allow SSH and RDP traffic from 0.0 to 0 instead of the organization firewall IP. What is the most efficient way to remediate this? Use config rules to detect 0.0.0 and invoke a Lambda function to update the security group with the organization's firewall IP. So config can continuously monitor security group configurations and automatically trigger Lambda-based remediation when overly permissive rules are detected. This approach provides both detection and automated correction of security violations. In response to past DDoS attack experiences, a security engineer has set up a CloudFront distribution for an S3. There's concern that some users may bypass CloudFront distribution and access the S3 directly. What must be done to prevent users from accessing S3 objects by using URLs? Set up a CloudFront origin access identity and change the S3 bucket object permission so that only the OAI has access. So origin access identity creates a special CloudFront user that can access S3 content. By restricting S3 bucket permissions to only allow the OAI, direct S3 URL access is blocked while maintaining CloudFront distribution functionality. Company plans to move most of its IT infrastructure to AWS. The company wants to leverage its existing on-prem Active Directory as an identity provider for AWS. What steps should be taken to authenticate services using the company's on-prem Active Directory? Create IAM roles with permissions corresponding to each Active Directory group. Create a SAML provider with IAM. Configure AWS as a trusted relying party for the Active Directory. So complete Active Directory federation requires creating a SAML identity provider in IAM, establishing trust relationships between Active Directory and AWS, and mapping Active Directory groups to IAM roles. This enables users to authenticate with Active Directory credentials and assume appropriate AWS permissions. A security analyst attempts to troubleshoot the monitoring of suspicious security group changes. The analyst was told that there is an Amazon CloudWatch alarm in place for these CloudTrail log events. The analyst tested the monitoring setup by making a configuration change to the security group but did not receive any alerts. What are the troubleshooting steps the analyst should perform? Verify a metric filter was created and then mapped to an alarm. Check the alarm notification action. So CloudWatch alarms for CloudTrail events require metric filters to extract relevant events from logs and proper alarm configuration with the notification actions. Missing or misconfigured metric filters or alarm actions will prevent alert delivery. And that marks the end. So we've gone over 600 or so questions, answers, and explanations based on the AWS Security Specialty. We've done a walkthrough of this. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop them on the video. Outside of that, hit like, hit subscribe, and share it if anyone you know is going to take the AWS Security Specialty Exam. Outside of that, thank you for joining, and we'll come up next with some more good content. Thank you. Have a good day.